An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6. Chapter 38. Storm in the Riverlands. Unseasonable warmth had come to the Riverlands. It was unexpected to John. While he realised that the land south of the Neck was much warmer and much more hospitable to life than the north. They were in the beginnings of the coldest winter in 1,000 years. The long night. It shouldn't be as warm as this. Straddling the melting point with the sun swaddling all of them in its rays. This would have been largely fine for John, lest for the unforgivable cold would spare the Unsullied and their saucy regulars in hospitable fighting conditions. All except for the mud. Gods! The mud. Not a rain cloud in sight, the intermittent days and nights of above freezing turning the ground beneath them into slush. A wet, gooey sludge that made marching take 3 times as long, and any kind of wheeled vehicle impossible through it. Try as they might, every one of the men in the Stark Targaryen combined army was splotched in brown. Even Daenerys, her leather battle dress defiled. John had insisted she stay on the stone-floored manor house where they encamped around, but she refused to not be among her army. Part of the reason why he loved his wife so. Inconvenient though it was, the worst problem the mud presented was blocking all of the reinforcement. The bulk of the northern and Unsullied at the Neck, the Dothraki cavalry and heavy siege pieces moving from Goldtown in the Vale, blocked by the snowmelt, turning the ground to mush. All they had against the Lannister host was the army that had garrisoned the Neck. "Have our scouts returned yet?" The soft Dany from their intimate moments was nowhere to be found, replaced by the imperial, hardened Dragon Queen. Lord Howland nodded. "Well?" He pursed his lips, trying best to spin what was clearly bad news. The withering look from both his king and queen killed that idea. They weren't Joffrey or Robert Baratheon. John and Dany wanted the truth, however unpleasant. 40,000 in total, give or take a few thousand. Accurate head counts were rare. 30,000 infantry, mostly Lannister, but with sizable portions from the Stormlands under Lord Selwyn Tarth. Lady Brienne, who had ridden south ahead of the main party that departed Winterfell, chafed at that. Fighting her father was not something she was looking forward to. 9,000 horse, of which 7,000 of that number are Westerlands, Crown Lands, or the Reach Knights, under the command of Randall Tarley of Hornhill. Dany gulped, seeking out John with her gaze. The Dower Wolf had returned as well, face unreadable, as he stared at the map stretching over the table. They were meeting in the open, a beautiful Riverlands day despite the mud. Splashing filled the still air from the River Trident, as beautiful as it was ominous. Where my brother died. And our forces. Dany knew how many poor troops Robb had taken to the twins, but perhaps they had been reinforced. A defeated sigh from Robb put that hope to bed. 24,000, your grace. 5,000 Northerners and loyal bannermen, 7,000 Unsullied, and 10,000 Essosi regulars. 500 wildlings and 1,000 Vale Knights. We are strong, but outnumbered. An aura of futility and self-loathing filled Robb Stark. Missing his brother's wedding to coordinate the initial positions against Joffrey, Jaime Lannister outmaneuvered him to take the linchpin of their southern defences. He had failed the North at the Red Wedding, and was failing everyone all over again now. I received a raven from Mother in the castle. She and the Blackfish have 500 men. Enough for a sally with support, but nowhere near enough to hold if the Lannisters try to swarm them. What about our reinforces? Lord Kerwin seemed frustrated, as they all were. Stuck in the mud, no doubt, said the Blackfish commented. A loud roar filled the din. And what of my dragons? Dany allowed a small bit of hope. 3 of them would equalise the battle. John spoke for the first time. I wouldn't risk them to the Lannister scorpions. Ramsay Bolton had but a few, and they nearly captured a Rhaegal. The memory left a bitter feeling within Dany. How many do they have here? Our scouts counted 20, maybe 25. Gritting his teeth, John felt a persistent throbbing headache, beginning to take refuge in his mind. We're not ready. Not ready. With what was obviously a mad decision to attack without the main body of troops in Tywin's army, which were still either in Dawn or being offloaded in the Crown Lands, ended up in a non-intended stroke of genius for Joffrey. 40,000 elite forces with strong mix of infantry, cavalry and artillery, while their forces were outnumbered and lacking in the latter two categories. Glancing at Dany, Jon realised her eyes hadn't broken their gaze at the sketch model of scorpions and larger ballistae, likely able to break through the walls of Riverrun in a full assault. The lessons learned against Ramsay brought the dragon's use into question. Damn it! He stared helplessly at the sky, feeling not the mighty heir to the Targaryen line, but the insignificant bastard of Winterfell at that moment. Damn it all to hells! Please, father, send me a sign! The flutter of a bird's wing, barely audible over the bickering and gnashing of teeth, reached Jon's ears. He looked up to find the greyish-black of a mockingbird. Jon stared at it. It stared right back at him, eyes lining up. A mockingbird. An auspicious omen if one could find, at least according to the northern law. Chirping, it left off the branch and began to fly through the trees. Trees. Suddenly it came to him. Robb! All his commanders and advisers fell silent at the single statement. Jon pushed aside the puzzled looks and met his brother's gaze. How far out is the diplomatic party from Winterfell? His brother blinked, unsure of where Jon was going with this. We received a raven of their progress this morning. They've passed Moat Cailin and will be here in 2 days. Why? Is Tormund with them? That's what the message said. Jon felt a soft hand on his arm. Jon! Dany's indigo orbs bored into him. What are you thinking? The king allowed himself a knowing smirk for the first time since their wedding. At the wall. Sam told me stories about his father. Mostly they revolved on how abrasive and cruel they were. I am sure such stories are interesting, Your Grace, remarked Edmure Tully, as stressed and emasculated as any of his commanders, even more so due to Riverrun being his castle and his ancestral seat, being taken from him once by the Lannisters. But how does this help us in retaking my home from the enemy? His tone was biting. Edmure had every reason to be enraged, given the hell put upon him by Tywin in the phrase, though he still loved his wife and boy despite his former heritage. Quiet, said the heavy Giscari accent only made by Grey Worm's command more booming and authoritative. Let the king finish. Jon nodded gratefully at the unsullied commander, while Dany sent him a smile. However, one story he told me of once he overheard his father speak of. Something that happened when Randall Tarly commanded at the mounted forces of my father's army at the Trident. Such was a horrible day to think of it, for Jon knew what he knew now. But here he would be avenging his father, for both his and Dany's sake, and for the realm's. Lord Tarly planned to try something new, instead of the classic mounted charge. What he called a hammer and anvil strike. Dany, Robb, and the other lords listened to him as he explained it. Lord Royce, he addressed the aging Lord of Runestone. Yes, Your Grace. As cavalry commander, Jon Royce paid close attention to this discussion. It has come to my attention that there are rumours concerning your loyalty. A mirthful smile danced upon his lips. It would be a shame if you deserted us with the Vale cavalry at the moment the battle is joined. Royce flustered. But I assure you, Your Grace, I am fully behind you. Looking from Royce to Jon, Dany was starting to worry. Her husband was an excellent leader with good instincts, but where was this going? What does any of this have to do with the wildlings, Jon? Asked Robb, still confused. Leaning forward, Jon splayed his arms on the map table. If Jaime Lannister wants to fight a cavalry battle, then why don't we let him? You will bend the knee, Torrhen Stark! Wooden stick in hand, little Arya ducked around the smithy and waved it at her brother. Surrender now, or face the fire of Meraxes! Above swept Rhaella, screeching with enjoyment. Rhaegar, with his dark curls and dour determination, looked every inch the heir to the north. Winter always comes, vile Rhaenys! Giggles threatened to leave both twins at their play-acting. They tried to be great kings and queens, but it was just so ridiculous and fun. A dragon is no match for a direwolf. Whistling, Aunt Sansa taught him that. A smug satisfaction filled Rhaegar every time he watched Arya try and fail. 2 massive direwolves bounded over from where they had been resting, the size of small ponies and terrifying to behold. With the twins, they were the gentlest of dogs. Ghost nuzzled Rhaegar's hair, but in the middle of a game of battle, it did not go over well. "No, Ghost! Nymeria! Attack Rhaenys!" Ah! Knocked onto the soft snow, giggles and weak protests left Arya as the direwolves began licking her face. Quite adorable and joyous, it was a shame that the courtyard was deserted. "Stop! Ghost! Nymeria!" "Brother! Sister! Help me!" Sensing, quote-unquote, Rhaenys in danger, Rhaella hooted to her sisters from her perch on Ghost's back, where he could once carry all of them, and now only one could fit comfortably. Down dove Sansenya and Lyannaeris, joining with their sister to mob Rhaegar. Bite strong and claws sharp, combined with their dragon fire, they could do considerable damage if they wanted to. But to the little dragon wolf they were gentle, affectionate even. "No!" He laughed at the attention. "Direwolves! Aegon and Visenya have come! We must fall back!" Barking, Ghost left Arya and helped nudge the hooting dragons away, while Nymeria barked, guiding her little lord to a safe place. Laughing as well, Arya pointed to where her brother was running. "Meraxes! Vhagar! Balerion! To the cave!" Hooting in delight, the dragons followed the little dragon wolf, silver hair flowing, to the entrance of the kennels, only for a foreboding presence to cause them to hover, screeching. There was the smell of dog, as imagined, but the new Winterfell dogs loved the twins as much as the direwolves did. No, it was something else. Their nasal receptors picked up the scent of a dragon, but not dragon. It smelled worse than even the most putrid enemy that the girls shrieked again, flapping away. Smile still on her face, Arya approached the still form of her brother. "I found you, King in the North!" About to grab him, the sudden stillness in her twin suddenly became apparent. "Brother?" she asked hesitantly. At his lack of response, Arya followed Rhaegar's eyes to where they gazed at. It just now felt colder than the winter temperatures outside. The cell was empty, or rather, seemed empty, until something in the corner shifted. "Away with you, bastard!" came a weak, hoarse voice. "Leave me be!" Feeling the foreboding nature shroud over him, Rhaegar nevertheless steeled himself. "I am a Stark and a Targaryen. No fear." "Who?" He stepped closer to the bars. "Who are you?" Ears perking up, the person that had once been Prince Viserys Targaryen began to crawl towards the iron bars that kept him from freedom. A soft, childlike voice hadn't been what he had expected. Blinking his eyes took several moments to adjust to the light. "I am the one true king of Westeros," he hissed, but the normal anger in his voice was tempered by curiosity. "You have the look of a Stark." Rhaegar and Arya stared in equal parts wonder and fear. The person before them was a man. Essentially his papa's age, but far skinnier. Almost skeletal. He was filthy, but the silver hair matted to his skull was distinctive. A Targaryen, just like their Muna. "I am Rhaegar, Crown Prince of House Targaryen." A thought occurred to Arya, connecting the dots. "Are you our uncle? Muna's brother?" Their mother rarely talked about him, but he had to be kind and loving, as Arya, Sansa, Robb and Rickon. Right? They love us. Of course he does. Milky violet eyes widened as Viserys understood. Rather than smile as Arya expected, his face curled into an enraged sneer. "I knew it!" His voice dripped venom. "He fucked her, didn't he?" Aside from the panicked shouts when in danger, the twins never heard yelling. Chiding, yes. Stern discipline, yes. But never anything resembling the enraged vitriol thrown their way. Rhaegar stumbled back while Arya started to shake. Ghost and Nymeria, who had been sniffing at each other, tensed and looked towards his wards. "Uncle! Uncle! Uncle!" Rage, frustration at the loss of his birthright, welled up in him like a volcano. It erupted in the face of the perfect representations of what he had lost. The dragon wolves. Clearly Stark, but clearly Targaryen as well. "I am no uncle of yours! Dirty half-breed scum!" They reeked of Stark, reeked of the bastard, to lay with the dog of the usurper! A bastard!
bastard!"
Feeling his sister starting to sob into his shirt, Rhaegar fought back the tears himself as he felt an urge to protect his father.
"He is no bastard! He is the king! A good king!"
"Your father is scum! The son of a whore!"
Viserys pulled on the bars, pressing his face through the opening. The madness was on full display.
"And now he lies with another whore! I should have taken Daenerys when I had the chance. Had proper Targaryens, not half-breeds of northern traitors and whores."
"Little wolves!" Jogging slowly from the steps of the balcony, Arya glanced around the courtyard. "Where did you get off to this time?" She laughed. They were worse than Bran and her, exploring every nook and cranny of the castle. "It's time for your lessons." Little wolves? Try as she might, they were nowhere to be found. Arya smirked. She liked a challenge. However, unlike the other times when the twins decided to play predator and prey, and they did it often, Arya always flushed them out in a barrage of tickles from her and licks from Nymeria. This time it was far easier. All she had to do was pick up on Ghost and Nymeria's growling. Growling? Now her faceless man antenna was picking up dangers. Ears pinpointing the sound, she zeroed in on the kennels. The kennels! Arya's eyes widened. 7 hells! Eyes flickering towards it, she already saw the forms of the dragons perched above the entrance in obvious distress. Heart thudding, she ran towards the open tunnel. What she found made her blood boil hotter than dragon fire. Tears cascaded down the twins' cheeks, trembling in each other's arms as they shut their eyes tightly. Ghost's teeth were bared in a malevolent growl, and Nymeria hissed in anger, but such wasn't the cause of her niece and nephew's discomfort. Instead, it was the rabid shouts and snarls from beyond the iron bars.
"Your mother is a whore and a traitor, polluting the Targaryen bloodline with subhuman scum! I should have taken her when I had the chance, and put a sword through your fucking necks when you were brats but babies!"
But just before the direwolves lunged into a mad frenzy at the bars, Viserys found a sharp tip pricking at the skin of his neck.
"One more word out of you, Viserys Blackfire, and those direwolves will be the least of your problems."
She so wanted to kill him. He was on her list for what he did to the North. But Arya knew that he deserved to answer before the realm for his crimes. She reluctantly sheathed her needle. "The North remembers, and winter will come for you yet." Wrapping her arms around the crying twins, she guided them out. Undaunted and mind likely snapped completely from reality, Viserys lunged his good arm through the bars in a desperate attempt to close around her throat.
"I will get out of here, you stark bitch! And when I do, I'll find another army and burn you all!"
Arya ignored his deranged rantings, hustling the twins until they were free of the Mad Prince's tirade within the main solar. Sobs still racked the little ones, snot and tears lining their faces. Oh, little wolves. Opening her arms, Arya felt them clinging to her for dear life. "It's all right. He can't hurt you now." Stroking their backs, the crying soon dissipated, though the little forms still trembled. "Gods! What happened?" Arya looked up to see Sansa, concern written all over her face. Seeing the twins' sobbing forms, she rushed over and knelt beside them. "Sweetlings, what troubles you?" Still trembling, it was Arya who spoke for them. "Viserys." Her eyes were burning, mouth set in determination. Mouthing a curse, Sansa hugged her niece and nephew from behind. "Shh! Don't tremble, sweetlings." The bad man," mumbled Rhaegar, turning to burrow his face into the crook of Sansa's neck. He and his older aunt were as close as Arya was with her namesake. Such was a close family, the Starks, the Pack survives. "He called Mama a whore, and Papa a bastard." Words new to him. He said them haltingly. "He said he was going to put a sword to our necks." Fresh tears fell from little Arya. "Listen to me, sweetlings." Sansa looked at both with all the affection in the world. Resigned to never having children, she could at least satiate her maternal instincts with her beloved niece and nephew. "That monster will never hurt you. I will not let him. Even if he tries, he'll have to reckon with a needle," Arya said with grim determination. At that point a bannerman walked in. "Lady Arya?" "Not now!" she shot back, continuing to console her niece and nephew. "A dispatch from His Grace, my lady." To his credit, the bannerman did look apologetic for intruding on the moment. Wordlessly, he handed it to Arya and left. Sansa nodded to her. Go and take care of what Jon wants. I'll get the little ones a hot supper. Come on, sweetlings. Hot pie's making lamb stew. Running her hands through her hair in frustration, the young woman stepped back out into the cold. Watching Nymeria fall onto the ground next to Ghost, the white direwolf started to lick her fur. Arya quickly perused the words in the dispatch. Looks like Gendry and I have to get going.
Loose!
Clunking, the gears of the trebuchet groaned from the friction before its rope resonated with a whip-like crack. A load of rocks shot through the air before smashing into the inner walls of Riverrun Castle, soon joined by several more lobs in quick succession that caused damage unseen by the observers. The defenders did not let the slight go unanswered, as a fusillade of arrows began peppering the muddy ground around the siege artillery. Several screams rang out from hits, the artillery men racing back from the mobile mantles. Settling his spyglass down, Sir Bronn of the Blackwater whistled. That woke 'em up! Ceasefire! Ceasefire! The battery commander screamed, as the protective scorpions halted their return fire. Less than a minute passed before the last arrow impacted the ground, the siege of Riverrun returning to the anticlimactic, sleepy affair that it had been for the past weeks. Turning his head away from the men as they moved the trebuchet battery out of longbow range, Bronn groaned and met the eyes of the commander. This is fucking pointless. Are we going to storm the castle or prepare an actual siege? Or what I fucking suggested and flesh out the damn northern butt bitches before the blizzard comes back? Jaime rolled his eyes at the classic Bronn speak. There's a Dothraki horde and 3 dragons bearing down on us. I would think that someone who fights for a return on his investment would want to be cautious. Truth be told, he thought being here was a massive error. To wait for his father's main host would swell them to over double their current size. But what Joffrey wanted, Joffrey got. My boy. My son. He is the Mad King reborn. Clenching his fists in anger at the whole damn scenario, Jaime glared at Bronn. If you sent the scouts as you were supposed to, then we'd at least know where they were. I sent them, Bronn replied nonchalantly. He spat a Swiss of spit onto the mud. I bet if it wasn't for this damn muddy, they'd be back by now. Eyes narrowing, he peered into the distance. Say what you want about my motivations, and you still owe me a fucking castle for joining you in Dawn, twice. But you should always attack. Make the bitches respond to you. Sometimes gold-shitting aristocrats don't fucking get it, Bronn thought to himself. Hooves sloshing in the mud, the sound of gallops drew Jaime and Bronn to the arriving party. Lord Tarly, the commander offered to his main general. Lord Lannister, replied Randall Tarly. Sir Bronn. The grim-faced highborn saved a special contempt for the sellsword turned somewhat knight. Bronn would readily tell anyone around him how many fucks he gave. My lord, he said overly politely. Lord Tarth. Selwyn Tarth was more humble, and deserved a bit more respect. His gaze flickered to the baby-faced youth on a horse beside him, and... Rickon Tarly, correct? Said Jaime. Dickon, the boy corrected, causing a belly laugh to chortle from Bronn. The scouts have arrived, my lord. We have found the Northern Army? Jaime's brow furrowed. How many Dothraki? None. Randall Tarly flashed a rare smile, though it looked more sinister than joyous. They have 25,000 at most, barely any cavalry, and most of their infantry are foreign scum the Dragon Queen brought over. We need to crush them as soon as possible. Crush them using our cavalry. Seems too good to be true. In Bronn's experience, such moments usually were. What choice did Jaime have, though? Prepare for battle. We march on them tomorrow. As the entire Lannister camp descended into a madhouse of activity, no one noticed the small boat slipping through a bend in the river, guided by the directions Edmure had given them, and the 2 figures reaching the hidden side of the dock without much trouble. We're here to see Brynden Tully and Catelyn Stark, Gendry announced, trying his best to sound like a highborn commander. Who the fuck are you? came the responses sentries with their swords drawn. The second figure dropped her hood. Arya Stark! A short length of time later, Arya found herself in a crushing hug from her mother. You keep trying to give me an early death, sweetling. She chuckled, kissing her head. I'm fine, mother. Arya groaned into her shoulder, glancing at the sorry sight around her. A great castle built to withstand anything lesser than a dragon. The Lannisters had stolen a march on the defenders, leaving Riverrun without much time to stock itself for a lengthy siege. The Tully garrison had implemented bare-bone rations to extend them, and a lot of hungry bellies resulted. Lovely family reunions aside, my beloved grandniece, what is this all about? Gruff, the Blackfish, had seen too much in his life to afford to be sentimental. He saved that for his nephew Edmure, though the pain of being locked in the Frey dungeons may have tempered that considerably. Is his grace wishing to mount us a sally attempt out of the castle? He better bring a powerful army with him, then. A glance to the sorry state of the inner defences belayed his unsaid point. Breaking the tight embrace with her mother, Arya allowed herself a small smirk. Jon is here, with a little under 30,000. Catelyn's lips pursed in a disenchanted scowl. We're doomed, then. The Kingslayer can starve us out if he simply waits for his father's main force. Don't worry, mother. It's all the numbers we need. Her elaboration had the two Tullys nodding within minutes. Growling softly, almost a purr or a hum, Rhaegal lowered his head till essentially hovered just above chest height. Chuckling, Jon knew exactly what he wanted. Easy, boy. No need to be scared. Extending his hand out, he began to rub the dragon's lower jaw. You have your flight and your fire back. No one's going to come close to hurting you again. As Jon began to scratch the soft scales, Rhaegal's purrs intensified. The dragon's eyes closed as he enjoyed the sensation from his father and rider. He had been restless all day from what Jon noticed, and the king could simply feel the emotions of the Battle of the Bastards, and nearly being pinned to the ground or weighing on him. As the clouds of war sprung anew, everything will be fine. Jon didn't know if he was comforting Rhaegal or himself. So entranced in the thoughts of battle soon to be, joined and the battle long ago fought, Jon didn't notice the winged shapes and thuds behind him until he felt a heavy nudge against his back. Had it not been for Rhaegal's head to push back against, he would have fallen. The green dragon growled and snapped his jaws at them. Don't hurt father, was the essential message that Jon managed to figure out. Turning, he saw Balerion hiss while Edaron merely simmered. Hey! Hey! Jon tried his damnedest not to burst out laughing. The dragons reminded him of how he, Robb, Arya and Sansa used to bicker and squabble amongst themselves. Be nice to your brothers, he chided Rhaegal, giving him one last scratch on the lower jaw. You can't hog your father's time anymore. Growling softly, Rhaegal hooted at his brothers and nuzzled his snout against Jon's chest. Jon laughed. Just a big old softy at heart, like Ghost. If left to his own devices, Ghost would run off into the woods or roll in the grass while he rubbed his fur. Turning to Balerion and Edaron, he met their gazes. Father hasn't forgotten you. They may not have been as close as he was with Rhaegal, but they were still his children as much as the twins, or the girls were. Reaching out, he began to rub their snouts, eliciting the same low growls of contentment and delight. There you are! Glancing over his shoulder, Dany could see a smile spread on her husband's face at the sight of her. Her heart made a little catch. He's so handsome when he smiles. Stepping forward until they were mere inches away, Dany wrapped her arms around his side. They love you. It never ceased to amaze her how close the bond was between Jon and her. Their dragons. They had no knowledge of him, and had been raised by her, yet Rhaegal flew halfway across the world to him, and even the temperamental Balerion adored him. So do I. Feeling the stress of the week melting away at his wife's touch, Jon continued to scratch the scales of the two dragons. I love all of you as well. Jaws opening in a yawn, Balerion leaned forward to nuzzle his mother, before curling up into a nap, joined by his brothers. Jon let out another chuckle at the scene. I still remember when I first saw Rhaegal, sweeping out of the storm clouds and burning everything. It was shocking that I didn't piss myself in front of this quote-unquote beast in front of me. Kissing his cheek, Dany walked towards the sleeping Rhaegal. They were never beasts. regardless of what her enemies say in their propaganda. She sighed, softly running her hand along her sleeping child's snout. We almost lost him, Jon. Sadness clouding her features. Twice. One to the others, and one to Ramsay Bolton. Daenerys had no doubt that the sadistic freak would have slaughtered Rhaegal had he been acting unilaterally, only capturing him because her brother thought he could ride him. Fool. Let alone the fact he was no dragon, Rhaegal had already bonded to Jon. Behind her, Jon wrapped his arms around his wife's waist. She leaned her head back against his shoulder, sighing at his touch. We won't lose them, my love. I promise. I could lose you, too. Dany turned in his arms, cupping his cheek. You are already a king, Jon. Don't put yourself in danger. It killed him inside to worry Dany so much. But Jon couldn't allow himself to go down the road to tyranny. What kind of king will I be if I didn't fight for my people? The words said at the parley with Viserys and Ramsay came to mind. Trying not to tear up, Dany stroked his soft raven whiskers with her thumb. What kind of king will you be if you died? She didn't think she could bear it if he did. They were just that important to her. Your plan... If Randall Tarly and the Lannisters took the bait, then Jon would be putting himself right in the path of a heavy cavalry charge. She didn't need to finish. He understood. I know. Jon tightened his hold on her, absorbing her warmth. His father, Ned Stark, had always taught him to be humble before the gods, to eschew arrogance at every opportunity. But with Dany, he felt like he could take on the world and be victorious. A powerful feeling, but one he needed to be mindful of not to blind him. He pulled back to look in her eyes. I promise you, Daenerys. Her eyes sparkled. We will win. She said nothing, only pulling him into a kiss. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that because I did. Oh boy, so Viserys finally meets the twins. I've been waiting to do that scene for a while and I hope I did it justice. I originally meant to censor it, but you have to sort of say the swear words to get the effect. And I did censor 1 or 2 words because it has the C word in there and that is one word I will refuse to say. Just, I refuse. Poor little dragon wolves being confronted with that. And Jon's plan for the coming attack. This will be interesting. And I like how Gendry and Arya are basically attached to the hip. Let's hope Jon's plan works. See you in another chapter. Bye!